So, I'm going to start off this video by posing a question to my viewers. What is the best amusement park in America? There are a lot of good answers to this question. My home park, Cedar Point, will frequently get mentioned, along with the likes of Kings Island, Magic Mountain, and Busch Gardens Tampa. These parks pack in the biggest and most baddest coasters they can get their hands on, and lots of them. When you look at a park like Knoebels, on paper, this park doesn't seem to have a lot going for it. Sporting 5, possibly 6 coasters depending on your views, with the largest being a meager 101 feet tall, you wouldn't think that the rides here would be all that great. That is where we are all wrong. This park is not only one of the most fun places you could visit, but it's a portal back into decades past with the old-timey way this park functions. Proudly advertising itself as the world's largest free admission park, Knoebels charges by the ride, using tickets, and lacks any kind of parking fee or even front gates. You just walk right in and get your day started by heading right to the ride of your choice. So the thing about Knoebels is that this park operates an interesting selection of older flat rides in addition to its roller coasters. This is the one park where if you are just showing up to get the coaster credits and go, you are really selling the place short. The thing about these flats is that a lot of them are older rides that you just don't see anymore, and that have been professionally restored to like new status. They take really good care of these older rides, and are consistently finding and refurbishing new ones to add to their collection. Thus, this video will not only focus on just the coasters, but my favorite flat rides within the park as well. Starting with the coasters and the largest one in the park, Twister is a copy of a 1964 wooden coaster called Mr. Twister that used to operate at Elitch Gardens in Colorado. Knoebels purchased the blueprints of this ride and constructed it themselves, and this is a very smooth woody starting with 2 lift hills, followed by 2 very good drops, then a double helix, and the finale has some low to the ground turns, some bunny hills, and a tunnel. This ride provides some good laterals, not as good as the Legend at Holiday World, but still very respectable and fun. The 2 drops at the beginning of the ride provide good airtime in the back row as well. The bunny hills toward the end of the ride don't really do a whole lot for me, but I enjoy them anyway as well as the cool little tunnel. I would rank this as the second best coaster in the park. Moving on to Flying Turns, this ride has a fascinating history. See, the one thing that is common with a new ride announcement at Knoebels is that to get it right, they take their sweet time with construction, or in the case of their flats, refurbishment. Flying Turns is the poster child of that philosophy. Announced in 2005 and finally opening to the public in October of 2013, this is a wooden bobsled coaster that is supposed to be similar to a bobsled coaster that operated at Chicago's Riverview Park in the 1920s. The ride itself is fairly tame, just a couple of lift hills and a few swooping turns taken at a maximum of 24 miles per hour, so objectively speaking, this coaster is the number 4 experience-wise in the park's coaster lineup. However, the coolness factor of designing and building a wooden bobsled coaster is pretty much unmatched. You will simply not find another one of these out there. Yes, there are steel bobsled coasters like Reptilian at King's Dominion, which is objectively more fun, but the fact this ride exists speaks to the new ride addition's philosophy at Knoebels. The only major gripe one can have with this ride is its downright terrible capacity. Each train consists of 3 cars, and each car can fit a maximum of 2 riders, as long as the weight limit per car isn't exceeded. That means that this ride can get a substantial wait, hours in fact on the busiest of days. That makes it not only the hardest credit to get in the park, but one that is extremely difficult to get overall. I highly recommend that if you are visiting Knoebels, that you get to the park a half hour to 45 minutes early and start waiting for it immediately, even if you don't see it testing. Otherwise, it may not even be worth it to get in line for this ride. Next up is Impulse, their zero looping coaster. Standing 98 feet tall, and with a vertical lift and drop taking you up to 58 miles per hour, this is the first ride you see upon entering the park. It's a fun ride, with good inversions, and I particularly enjoy that inline twist. It is, though, the least Knoebels coaster out of the rides they have on display. It's just a bog standard roller coaster, and though I haven't rode any other Zeros, it's very similar to the Gerstlauer Eurofighters that are common elsewhere. This ride just doesn't fit in with the other offerings they have here, and that doesn't mean I don't like it. The experience itself I would rank as the third best coaster in the park, but it's a shame that this bog standard ride is the first thing you see upon entering Knoebels. This is a ride you may also want to hit earlier in your day, as with only 8-person trains, it can gather a rather long line. It is also a fairly short ride too, at just under 2,000 feet in length. For the kids out there, Cosmos Curves is an E&F Miler family coaster, and one of the larger ones I have seen. It's not a bad ride. In fact, they gave me 3 laps on it when I got the credit for it last year, which made it a satisfying experience for what the ride is worth. It goes over the canal that the park's motorboats cross through, which is interesting as well. I rank this coaster number 5 in the park, and there really isn't much else to say here. It fills the gap when it comes to a kiddie coaster. A ride I do have plenty to say about is the Phoenix. This is the park's star attraction and one of the very best wooden coasters you can find. First opening as Rocket at Texas's Playland Park in 1947, this ride was relocated to Knoebels in 1980 and opened to the public there in 1985. On paper, it doesn't look like much. It's just a double out and back Woody, standing 78 feet tall with a 72-foot drop, maxing out at 45 miles per hour. These stats are completely eclipsed by the ridiculous airtime this ride has to offer. This coaster is airtime heaven. Its hills will literally have you standing when the train drops out from under you. Making this possible are good old-fashioned buzz bar restraints, not only allowing for that amazing airtime, but extremely fast ride dispatches as well. Starting with the back row experience, the airtime you get off of its initial drop and turnarounds gives you some good floater. The ride then features a combination double up and double down, and that double down gives a very similar experience to the Kennywood Jackrabbit in the back row. That is some serious ejector air there. And for the ride's finale, you get bunny hills, and these are the moments that give you that standing ejector airtime where the train literally drops out from underneath you. This moment, no matter what row I am in, always leaves me with a big stupid grin on my face. It's pure fun all around, and an experience I have not found elsewhere. For the front row experience, the drops don't do a whole lot, but the crests into the turnarounds gives you excellent ejector air coming up into them. That double up also throws you out of your seat, and then even in the front, the double down still hits pretty nice. The finale is still comical in its insane airtime and is something you absolutely must experience for yourself to believe. Due to that ejector you get into the turnarounds, I prefer the front row of the ride over the back. This ride has won golden ticket for the best wooden coaster over rides like El Toro, Shivering Timbers, and Voyage, and I can see why. Not just the best ride in the park, but a top 10 worthy coaster overall for anyone's rankings. When looking at the rides at Knoebels, it's important that we discuss the 2 dark rides they have to offer. Black Diamond is technically a roller coaster, and even features 2 very trimmed drops, but judging it as a roller coaster just doesn't feel right. What the ride is actually doing is showing the experience of coal mining in Pennsylvania. It doesn't really hold back either when it comes to showing what a grim, dirty, and hard task miners had. That is if you're paying attention, because a lot can fly by without you really noticing. There is even a Centralia exhibit, which is especially interesting to me, and for those not in the know, Centralia is a town that existed not too far away from Knoebels, which had to be evacuated and eventually torn down due to a raging coal mine fire that caused the land to become extremely unstable in that region. It existed as a ghost town for a while and helped to inspire the Silent Hill video games, which I am a big fan of. Haunted Mansion is the other dark ride at Knoebels, and is more your traditional haunted house kind of dark ride featuring cool art, creepy settings, and jump scares. I will be quite frank with everyone regarding this ride, in that I don't really care for it. That isn't to say it isn't cool, but the constant blaring horns and buzzers just give me a headache more than anything. I still recommend it, and I know it is a well-loved and cherished ride, but I can safely say with multiple rides on it that it just isn't for me. This is another ride that can garner a very long wait, so I recommend hitting it up early. Knoebels has a widely diverse array of flat rides, so many that I will really only go into depth on my favorites. First up, we have the Knoebels Flyers. These flying scooters are the GOAT of all flying scooters. They run fast, you can get your car nice and high, and when you get to the bottom and whip that sail, you can get a good jerk forward. There are near misses with the trees just outside the ride area that help to increase the thrill. Now, we can't talk about these flying scooters without mentioning snapping. Snapping refers to the sound of the cables slackening and tightening such that your car bounces along. To do this, you need to be getting the maximum height and be jerking that sail back at the right time when you come back to the ground. This is extremely fun to do and changes up the ride experience quite a bit. I've only managed it a few times, mostly at Carowinds, as the official policy of Knoebels is that they don't really want you doing this. However, it is ride-op dependent, and though Carowinds is preferable for snapping for that reason, the ones at Knoebels provide the best experience if you accidentally do it towards the end of the ride cycle. You have likely heard me complain about flying scooters at other parks like Cedar Point, Kings Island, Indiana Beach, and Stricker's Grove. Those parks butchered their flying scooters with an extremely slow speed and short ride cycles. They turned what should be a thrill ride into a children's ride. I really wish they would run these the way Knoebels runs theirs, as they are still excellent rides for kids, though they likely won't take them as high or snap them like thrill seekers would. The next flat ride is one I had flat out never seen or heard of before visiting Knoebels. The Looper is a flat ride where you sit in a wheel-shaped car and rock back and forth in an attempt to roll you as if you were tires on a car. This ride requires a friend, you may not ride it alone, and from what I understand, they will pair you with someone if at all possible. So as you rock back and forth on this ride, you'll hit a point where one person is above while the other person is below you. At that point, there is a pedal on the bottom that the person below needs to push in order to get the wheel to fully spin the car. Otherwise, you will simply rock back the other way. It can be tricky to figure this out, and they have a video monitor in line that explains this to you, but you likely won't see it properly or hear it with all the noise around you. I actually had to ask the ride ops how it is properly done after we failed to get it to roll on our first ride. Our mistake was that the person above was pressing the pedal, causing the wheel to brake rather than roll. All in all though, I highly recommend this ride and it is another older model flat that Knoebels took a lot of care in restoring. The carousel at Knoebels is one of the most beautiful rides I have ever seen. The well-maintained artwork pops out at you, and the organs provide good music when you are close by or riding it. This carousel features the ring game, something I have only ever seen here at Knoebels. I don't have it in my footage, but off to the side, a board comes down with a mechanism that deposits little metal rings you can catch if you are precise enough with your fingers. This can take a moment to get exactly right, but it is fun. Coaster Serpent recommendation: if you plan on playing the ring game, trim your fingernails before riding. I broke a nail playing this game, and it was actually bleeding a bit when I got off of the ride. This won't be a problem if your nails are fully trimmed, but I walked around for the rest of the day with a bit of an annoying pain in my fingers and a split in my nail that caught on everything annoyingly for the rest of the week. The next flat is an absolute blast to ride with a friend. The Satellite is a rolo-plane, also known as a salt and pepper shaker ride. These used to be a common find in traveling fairs, but are less common these days. Featuring both backwards and forwards cycles, this ride never inverts the rider, but offers interesting forces as the car drops you back towards the station and then back up towards the top. It also has a lateral section, where the cars spin parallel to the ground, and with the ride vehicle rocking side to side, throwing the riders against each other. This may sound painful, but I assure you it's not. You and your friend will be laughing crazy as this happens and will give you memories of your trip for years to come. These have poor capacity, but the one here doesn't seem to garner a huge line, even on the busiest of days. The Whipper is an old Mangles whip ride, and though these are common in Pennsylvania, they are practically non-existent elsewhere. Riders board a car that is attached with cables, and two large gears at the ends cycle the cars around the track. When the riders reach these gears, the ride vehicle you are sitting in is whipped back and forth freely as the car U-turns the other direction. These are fun rides, and unlike Dorney Park, which felt the need to stick a seat belt on the cars, these operate without that pointless addition and give you good lateral forces. I would say that the Kennywood Whip gives the best experience, that is if it's not a hot sunny day. Kennywood's doesn't have a roof over theirs, which can make the Knoebels one preferable during the hot summer season. My only complaint is that Knoebels often gives too short of a ride cycle on these. Downdraft is a spinning flat ride and starts up by intensely spinning you in the air, giving excellent laterals. Once the ride is fully up to speed, the gondolas start going up and down as the ride continues to spin. This can result in slight pops of weird sideways airtime. The best experience can be had when the ride isn't loaded to full capacity, as I feel that with less of a load on the gondolas, the up and down motions are more intense. As a disclaimer, I will state that any friends you have who don't care for potentially nauseating experiences shouldn't ride this flat. I, however, immensely enjoy it. Given that this ride has decent capacity, you shouldn't wait too long for it. Stratosphere is the park's drop tower. This drop tower is on the shorter side, only being 148 feet tall, but it offers a very intense experience. It slowly takes you up to the top, and with little to no warning, you immediately plunge to the bottom. You get an excellent view of the park on the way up, and I recommend sitting on the side where you can watch the Phoenix. If you have been to Kentucky Kingdom, they also have a drop tower of the same model. As I said earlier, Knoebels is well known for purchasing older flat rides and coasters and taking their sweet time refurbishing them in order to provide guests with the best experience possible. Currently in the works, they have a Bayern curve that they have been working to restore for the past few years. This promises to be a really fun experience, as I know well that Kennywood locals are still burnt by the loss of their own Bayard curve back in 2020. They also have a Rocco plane, which is a ride somewhat like a zipper, but in a Ferris wheel kind of configuration. They operated it last year, but have chosen to move the ride to a different part of the park this year, so it's currently inoperable. When Knoebels adds a new ride, they look to make it something special rather than a bog standard ride that can be found elsewhere. Them being well known for refurbishing old rides or bringing back models from the dead is what makes the place so appealing. I mentioned how Impulse doesn't fit in with this philosophy and even sticks out within the park. With that in mind, their next coaster edition should truly be something special. They should try to resurrect the steeplechase, or build a wooden Wild Mouse, or bring back the Virginia Reel. The worst thing this park could do is add a B&M or an RMC. I would like those additions anywhere else, but those rides wouldn't feel like good additions in a park like Knoebels. Lastly, I want to mention the food. I don't typically touch on food at amusement parks, as often your options are your typical overpriced fast food served elsewhere. However, Knoebels does an excellent job with their food, and it is very reasonably priced. The taco place in particular that is near the Black Diamond offers giant servings of ice cream and 2 for $4 tacos. For the same price as Taco Bell, you get a better taco than Taco Bell, and that impresses me immensely. And unlike Taco Bell, you won't be sick the next day with stomach cramps and diarrhea. To conclude, I must once again impress on everyone that Knoebels is a place where you want to experience as much as possible. Coming here to get the roller coaster credits and then leave is vastly underselling it. There is lots to do, and often I don't feel like a single day here is enough. You don't find an experience like this anywhere else with its free parking, free entry, and ticketed rides. Each ride only costs between $3 and $4.50, so you can make just a bit of money go a long way here. People argue about what the best park in Pennsylvania is. Some feel it's Kennywood, others prefer the big offerings that Hershey Park offers, and Dorney Park has a dedicated fan base that loves their offerings. Knoebels isn't just my favorite place in Pennsylvania, but it may be my favorite park overall, topping even my home park, Cedar Point. Plan your trip and visit soon. If you enjoyed my video, please consider liking and subscribing, and thank you again for watching the Coaster Serpent.